July 1942. In a remote corner of Wales, the Allies test a pioneering, top-secret bomb. They're planning to blow up German dams to paralyze Hitler's booming war machine. To attempt this perilous raid, the Allies assemble state-of-the-art aircraft and a crew of Top Gun airmen. But they'll also need courage, ingenuity, and a large dose of luck to pull off one of the most audacious bombing missions in history. In this series, we investigate the most extraordinary events of World War II from a brand new perspective. Matching rarely seen archive film, photography from the front line, and remarkable aerial reconnaissance images to their original locations. We reconstruct the crucial battles. Daring bombing raids and deadly terror weapons that changed the course of history. Soaring over the battlefields, we reveal the secrets of World War II from above. June 1940. The Ruhr Valley, Germany. These are the heartlands of Hitler's booming war industry. This vast expanse of water is being held in place by one of the critical pieces of Nazi infrastructure, the Murner Dam. Built in 1913, the colossal structure stands 40 meters tall and stretches 300 meters across the valley. Nearby factories and mills rely on this water, both as a raw material and to generate hydroelectric power. The Murner Dam epitomizes the strength and scale of German engineering and industry that's underpinning and fueling the Nazis' expansion across Europe. In the West, they've driven the British and French armies into retreat, with hundreds of thousands fleeing from Dunkirk to England. Through June of 1940, the Nazis continue to steamroller to the west and south, occupying large parts of France. The Allies can't compete on the battlefield. Instead, the commanders decide to attack the industries back in Germany that are supporting and fueling Hitler's armies, many of which are concentrated along the Ruhr Valley. One of the most important industrial complexes in the Ruhr Valley is the Zollverein coal mine. Zollverein's 55-meter-tall winding tower is known as the Eiffel Tower of the Ruhr. It is the biggest colliery in Europe. The coal produced here is a key ingredient in steel production, so the Nazis need it in vast quantities to build guns, tanks, and submarines. Resident specialist Hannah Lerman explores this critical piece of infrastructure.
Germany at that time needed the power and needed the steel and needed the coal. We are talking about the black gold. It almost sounds like a marketing thing to say black gold, but it definitely was. The miners were very crucial to keep the war going.
7,000 people work here, but life as a miner is tough.
Back in those days, in the 1940s, it was actually hard labor by hand. This, for example, this drill, like I can hardly lift it and I can hold it for a few seconds, but if you imagine that this was obviously not vibrating, but literally shaking, and you would be doing this for many hours, then you have an idea how hard the work was in the coal mine. People would be working here in 3 shifts to keep the place running. The machines were not supposed to stand still.
In 1940, Zollverein produces over 3.5 million tons of coal every year. Mines like this are the heart of the Nazi war machine.
They would call this place the land of the 1,000 fires, because when you come here in the nighttime, the sky would be very light, full of orange and red from the heat when they're working in the steel factories.
If the Allies are going to defeat Hitler, they need to find a way to paralyze this booming production line. Fortunately, the commanders think they've spotted the Ruhr Valley's Achilles heel. In addition to Zollverein, there are numerous other coal mines and dozens of steel mills across the region. The smooth running of all this industry relies on 2 things: water and power. Both of these come from the sprawling local river network, with huge dams in the hills to the east. The Allies set out on a mission to blow up 3 of these dams: the Möhne, the Sorpe, and the Eder. Historian Victoria Taylor investigates why the Möhne Dam is the prime target for the Allies.
If you actually want to paralyse a nation's war effort, you really need to be going for the heart of its industry. And this is what the Ruhr Valley was, and indeed what the Möhne Dam was. You can go straight to interfering immediately with steel production that makes tanks and planes and other war equipment. Then the Germans are truly stopped in their tracks. When you see strong, imposing structures like this, you can start to tell why the Ruhr Valley was known as the Waffenschmiede des Reiches, or the armory of the Reich. In the war, this dam really was a point of immense pride for the local community. The dam's about 3 to 4 meters across. By standing here, you really start to get a sense of just how solid this dam is. You can see here my hand for comparison against just one block within this masonry dam.
The limestone masonry extends 40 meters down to the bottom of the reservoir. A clay bank on the waterside protects against leaks, and the wall widens to 34 meters at its base. Its foundations are locked into 3 meters of bedrock. Combined, this gives the dam colossal strength, enough to resist the pressure from over 100 million tons of water. Blowing a hole in this mighty wall will be a formidable technical feat. But one person is up for the challenge: Barnes Wallis.
If there's any aeronautical engineer that is qualified to try and make a crack at a dam like this, it's Wallis. But the problem is, this has never been done before. He's got to try and create a bomb that's going to be light enough to be transported, but heavy enough to smash this sort of dam into pieces.
Wallis quickly realizes the only way to produce enough destructive energy is to create a huge explosion deep underwater behind the wall. The question is, how much charge is required and how close does it need to be? This is not a sum that can just be done on paper. Wallace heads to a scientific research centre 30 kilometres northwest of London. This secluded woodland looks inconspicuous from above. A small stream snakes its way through the trees. But beneath this canopy, Barnes-Wallace's team starts their top-secret experiments in November 1940. Over 7 weeks, they intricately construct an exact miniature replica of the Myrna Dam. They use around 2 million tiny blocks to produce this 1/50th scale model. Every detail must be perfect for any results to be valid. Engineer Zainab Adigan explores Wallace's outdoor laboratory.
This is so cool. It's really tiny. In order to start to test out your theories and test out the constraints and understand what they are and how much impact they have on your design, you have to start small. By starting off small, you're able to easily identify what the issues may be.
Wallace must first calculate how close the explosive charge needs to be to the wall to bust the dam.
Water essentially is quite dense, so it actually acts as a buffer. So if you're passing charges through water, it will dissipate quite quickly. So in order for the full effect, you want to be as close as possible. It will take a lot of precision.
The scientists position a test probe up against the dam wall to measure the deflection. They use a wooden pole to drop the charge to the bottom of the water, 90 centimeters from the dam. No damage. They continue the tests, reducing the distance between the wall and charge. Eventually, the dam is breached. For Wallace and the scientists, the evidence is clear. To have any hope of success, the bomb needs to explode as close to the wall as possible. And it'll almost certainly take more than one direct hit.
By being as close as possible to the wall, he could use less of an explosive, so it's not too heavy, but he's still getting the impact that he needed to blow up the dam wall.
Wallace and his team now need to confirm these small-scale results can be recreated on a dam 10 times larger. They head to Wales. An isolated corner in the Elan Valley provides the perfect location to scale up their experiments. A local water authority has given the scientists permission to use Nanty Grow Dam. It's constructed of concrete and masonry, just like the Myrna in Germany. It's also exactly 1/5 of the size. In July 1942, the scientists prepare their supersized apparatus. Like in the small-scale trials, they use a pole to set the charge slightly back from the dam wall before lowering it down into the water. With 127 kilograms of high explosives at a depth of 3 meters, Barnes-Wallace climbs a nearby bank to watch from a safe distance. Success. The bomb blows a hole 18 meters wide and 7.5 meters deep. The challenge now facing the Allies is how to get the explosives into this exact sweet spot on the mighty German dams. From high above the Möhne Reservoir in the Ruhr Valley, Allied reconnaissance photos reveal 2 long booms on the water side of the dam wall. The booms support a pair of nets, which extend to the bottom of the reservoir. The nets are designed to protect against an underwater torpedo attack, and it would be virtually impossible to land a conventional bomb behind them. The Allies must think outside the box. Inspired by skimming stones across water, Barnes-Wallis devises an ingenious plan. He sets about inventing a brand new type of missile, one that can bounce across water. Wallis proposes launching the bomb from a low-flying plane and making it jump over the nets. But for it to bounce, it needs to spin. If the bouncing bomb is spinning forwards, it'll accelerate each time it hits the water and is likely to jump over the dam wall. Instead, Wallis's team suggests spinning the bomb backwards. As it skims across the water, the backspin will slow it down, and when it hits the dam, it should make the bomb cling to the wall as it descends. A pressure-controlled detonator will then trigger at the optimal depth. It's a highly ambitious plan. Wallis must carefully calculate the speed and height needed for the plane carrying the bomb. He also needs to determine exactly when the bomb should be released and how fast it should be spinning. To formulate a plan of attack, the team heads to the beach. In December 1942, Wallis and his team of scientists arrive at Chesil Beach in southwest England. This secluded 12-kilometre lagoon that runs alongside the beach provides an ideal arena for their top-secret tests. Wallis persuades the Air Ministry to convert a Wellington bomber to drop one of his early prototypes. The spherical test bomb is hung beneath the aircraft, so it can be spun before it's released. On the 4th of December, Barnes-Wallis himself is on board as a plane approaches the lagoon. Engineer Zainab Adigan understands the challenges facing the creator of the bouncing bomb.
This was the first time they've actually started to drop the bombs out of the planes, getting the theory out into the practical world.
The scientists film the trials in slow motion to calculate exactly how the bomb should be dropped.
There are so many different variables, and so there's a lot of places where error can happen. But in reality, you have an ideal spot where you want the bomb to stop. It all comes down to precision. There is no room for error there.
The shallow lagoon means the prototype bombs can easily be recovered for inspection and analysis.
Gosh, it is literally like a massive golf ball. Dimples must have been part of his design, so that must have helped in terms of the aerodynamic property of the bomb as it traveled through the air and through the water. You know how you can backswing a golf ball, and that's how you control the trajectory. So he used that, you know, the basis of that, and then employed that in his design, which is genius. A golf ball and a bomb it's completely different. But when you think about it, the physics behind the two, very similar.
The trials continue. But while the bomb successfully bounces, Wallace and the team struggle to control its spin and direction. In Lincolnshire, the RAF has selected one of their newest trailblazing aircraft to drop Barnes-Wallis's bouncing bomb. This is the Avro Lancaster. The plane is 21 meters long and has a wingspan of 31 meters. With 4 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, it can fly more than 4,000 kilometers without refueling, so the German dams are easily within range. Pilot and former Marine Arthur Williams explores this groundbreaking heavy bomber.
The Avro Lancaster formed the backbone of Bomber Command during the Second World War. We needed an aircraft that could fly long range, penetrate deep into enemy territory, and carry a large payload. We also needed an aircraft that was reliable. 4 engines gave the crews that reliability. And you see the first of the Merlin engines. She's really visually notable because of the massive chin radiator that sits on the underside, powering this massive propeller along. Up there you've got the cockpit and you've got the bomb aimer's position underneath. This piece of perspex here, the flat bit at a slight 45-degree angle, gives an uninterrupted view of the target beneath. So he'd be able to see exactly at what point to drop his bombs. One of the distinguishing features of the Lancaster is its twin tail configuration. And then we come to the business end of the bomber, the rear turret. The reason there's 4 machine guns here is because, of course, the bomber is most vulnerable from the back. If a German fighter is going to attack the aeroplane, they're generally going to come from the rear, which is why, unfortunately for the rear gunners, they were the most vulnerable. They were often, on many raids, the first people to get killed.
In addition to the 4 guns on the rear turret, there are 2 machine guns on the top of the aircraft and a further 2 on the front.
These aircraft gun turrets have an ability to turn, rotate and point up and down, so they give the Lancaster a pretty decent arc of defence, but they'll certainly make a German fighter pilot think twice about how long he wants to stay on the tail of a bomber for. Coming under the aircraft, you can't help but notice this vast space here. This was to contain all of the aircraft's 14,000 pounds worth of bombs. But of course, for the Dam Busters raid, this was all stripped out and replaced with 1 bouncing bomb.
There is no doubt this plane is capable of launching Wallace's bouncing bombs towards the German dams. But to stand any hope of success on such an audacious mission, they'll need a Top Gun crew to fly it. The commanders assemble a crack team from across the Allied air forces. They form a brand new RAF unit named 617 Squadron.
The planners of this mission knew that for the average Bomber Command pilot it would be virtually impossible, so they had to have the very best crews in order for this operation to stand a chance of succeeding. They needed pilots with the experience of flying multiple operations over Germany, who wouldn't be shaken by the prospect of facing enemy flak.
The planners choose an enigmatic 24-year-old called Guy Gibson to be the squadron leader.
Guy Gibson was selected because he was an extremely competent pilot. He'd flown a wide variety of aircraft, both twin-engine and multi-engine bombers, on various different types of raids, which is why Bomber Command selected him, because of his broad range of experience, and he was a very good leader of men as well.
Even with the creme de la creme of the Allied airmen and this new state-of-the-art aircraft, the operation will test the crews to their limits. The Germans know that their dams could be a target, so they've fortified the Möhne Dam. They've positioned an anti-aircraft gun at the north end of the wall and one on each tower. Combined, they can launch more than 2,000 20mm shells into the sky every minute. As well as the man-made defences, 617 Squadron will have to avoid hilltops and other obstacles as they descend to drop their bombs. Victoria Taylor investigates the valley's natural defences.
The challenges associated with bombing this dam are absolutely immense. You can already see that there's an army of trees that are going to be densely populated in the springtime of 1943. And we've also got to bear in mind that this is an industrial region as well. So you've got this haze that's coming over above from all the different factories and installations. And of course that is obscuring visibility as well. But even to get here, the journey is incredibly perilous. They're needing to contend with guns, try and avoid being detected on German radar. They need to make sure they're not getting picked off by German night fighters. And so really, when you add that, plus this challenge, this really should be impossible.
"617 Squadron will first come into range of the Nazis' coastal early warning radar. As soon as these stations detect enemy aircraft, Luftwaffe fighter planes can launch within minutes from aerodromes positioned along the line. The Nazis have built a second densely packed line of radar stations and aerodromes just to the west of the three target dams. To give 617 Squadron any hope of not being spotted by this web of defences, they must cross the channel at night. They'll also fly below 30 meters altitude, which should stop them being detected by the German radar. But the darkness conceals other hazards. Sand dunes that can soar over 50 meters high line the northern coastline of mainland Europe and will be hard to spot at night. The Lancaster pilots must also dodge power lines and even tall trees.
We can't overemphasize just how dangerous low-level flying was. We've got to remember that Lancaster wasn't designed as a low-level aeroplane. It was designed as a high-altitude or a medium-altitude bomber. This is proper chain-operated analog flying. When you turn that control column, there is a piece of wire and chain that goes out to the wing that pulls the aircraft over to the left and right. It's a bit like an old London bus, really.
It's not just the pilots who will struggle flying at night and at such low altitudes. It'll take exceptional skill from the navigators to stay on course for their 3-hour flight. They'll use a specially designed dome in the center of the plane to take readings in the night sky.
Many of the navigators on these bombing raids would be used to flying at high altitude, where they've got a bit of time to take a look at where the moon and the stars are aligned in order to give them a celestial position, but also taking reference from what we can see on the ground. But navigating from high altitude is considerably easier than when you're doing it at low level. Because you're flying so fast, the ground is rushing past you so quickly, it's almost impossible to see from any terrain where you are. You could see a railway line, you could see a road, you could see a series of buildings, but that could be anywhere in occupied Europe. So just knowing where you are and finding your way to the target would have been incredibly difficult.
Despite the awesome scale of the bomber on the outside, inside it's anything but spacious.
This is where all the crew would have embarked onto the aeroplane. You can pretty much see all of the positions. We've got top turret there, navigator's position, radio operator, pilot's cockpits right up there. And then down here, this lonely, gloomy looking space is where the rear gunner would have sat. It is quite a claustrophobic space. But when you think the 7-man crew with all of their cold weather gear, all of their oxygen and everything strapped on, it's going to be even more claustrophobic and cramped.
In these cramped spaces, the men of 617 Squadron are in the air for 5 hours a day, flying training missions through the spring of 1943. During the raid on the dams, their ability to maneuver this monstrous aircraft at low altitudes could be the difference between life and death. While the airmen hone their flying skills, the development of the bouncing bomb has moved here to Reculver Bay on the north coast of Kent. Barnes-Wallis remains convinced a spherical shape is essential to keep the bomb's trajectory true. But this time, the real-world tests prove him wrong. The prototype bomb remains hard to control. And breaks up on impact with the water. Wallis decides to try a cylinder instead. On the 11th of May, 1943, the first crews from 617 Squadron fly in to begin their trial runs with his revolutionary weapon. Engineers have adapted the undercarriage of the Lancasters and suspended Wallis's latest prototype beneath the aircraft. In the early tests, some bombs overshoot, while others stop short. But after weeks of tests, the team finally cracks the formula. The Lancaster must be flying at just 20 meters, traveling at 370 kilometers an hour, with the bomb rotating backwards at exactly 500 revolutions per minute, and be released between 365 and 411 meters from the dam wall. Achieving every one of these precise individual parameters seems nigh on impossible. Despite this, in just 3 days, 617 Squadron will fly 19 Lancasters deep into Nazi Germany in the hope that at least one can pull off the impossible. This will be one of the most audacious and high-risk bombing raids in history.
The task at hand was an incredibly difficult one. And the RAF know this, the pilots know this, the crews know this, but there's no other way around. They've got to punch their way into Germany and do the job that they need to do.
Late in the evening, on the 16th of May 1943, the Lancasters of 617 Squadron depart from Lincolnshire, each armed with a single bouncing bomb. One of the bomb aimers on board is Johnny Johnson.
We flew low, out into the moonlit North Sea, and we headed for the Dutch coast. We were aware that the gunners there had recognized the noise, and they'd be ready for us. Anyone who wasn't a bit apprehensive was either devoid of emotion or a stranger to the truth.
The planes take two different routes to try and confuse the German defences. 5 Lancasters take the longer northerly route, while the 14 others fly further south. As they approach the Dutch coast, one plane is shot down and 2 others are damaged and forced to return home. Further inland, more Lancasters are shot down or hit power lines. So as they near the dams, only 12 aircraft remain. Shortly after midnight, on the morning of the 17th of May, Guy Gibson arrives over the Murner Reservoir. He will be first to attempt this Herculean feat. As he lines up with the dam wall, he must make sure his altitude is exactly 20 meters above the water. To achieve this level of accuracy, the aircraft shines 2 narrow beams down onto the surface of the water. When the beams perfectly align, they release the bomb. Under heavy fire from the German guns, Gibson pulls up as Wallace's bomb sinks into the water. It explodes short of the wall. For the German defenders, it's a harrowing sight. One of the gunners is Alfred Lengert.
Und wie die angegriffen haben, dass wir das in Augenhöhe, die Maschinen, die Lancaster-Bomber auf uns zukommen lassen. Wir haben das Feuer eröffnet, die haben auch auf uns geschossen, aber es wurde von uns kein Mensch getroffen. Und mit diesem Getöse von den Maschinen, die sie haben, dass man gar nicht verstanden hat. Das ist nicht zu schildern. Die kommen da da werden diese riesen Dinger da auf dich zukommen.
The second bomb drops. This time, it's released too late. The bomb flies over the wall and explodes in the valley below. To make matters worse, the Lancaster has been damaged by the German flak and crashes nearby. 5 of the crew perish. Undeterred, Gibson calls in the next plane and circles round to try and draw some of the flak fire.
As he called each aircraft in turn, he flew alongside. This to me says, you're doing this, I'm doing this, we're doing it together. And that to me is the essence of good leadership.
The third bomb dropped, veers sharply off course, and explodes without causing any damage. But the pilot joins Gibson in circling around to provide cover for the 4th attempt. After bouncing 3 times, the bomb hits the wall and sinks deep into the water. underwater explosion fails to breach the mighty dam. The raid has now been going for over 20 minutes. 4 of the squadron's bombs have been dropped without success on the Möhne, and the threat of the Luftwaffe arriving is growing fast. Gibson calls in the next plane. The crew release bomb number 5. As the pilot pulls up, the backspin makes the bomb cling to the dam wall, just as Wallace predicted. The explosion sends a plume of mud and water 300 meters into the sky. And blasts a hole 76 meters wide in the dam wall. Against all the odds, 617 Squadron has breached the mighty Möhne Dam. The remaining Lancasters drop their bombs on the 2 other targets. The Sorpe Dam is barely damaged, but they succeed in blowing up the Ada. The surviving crews begin their long journeys home.
Route out took us straight over what had been the Möhne Dam. There was water everywhere. Water was still coming out of the dam, and this must have been 20 minutes, perhaps half an hour, since the breach. So we had at least the satisfaction of seeing some real results for the endeavours of that raid.
The flooding causes devastation along the Ruhr Valley. This is a major setback for Hitler at this crucial time in the war. Factories, mills and mines are paralyzed as towns are inundated. Just as the Nazis are being pushed back by the Soviets in the east. The Dam Busters raid kills nearly 1,400 people, but they are almost all civilians. .617 Squadron have also suffered heavy losses. Of the 133 aircrew who attacked the dams, 53 have been killed, most in their early 20s. Despite this, the raid is a huge victory in the propaganda war. King George comes to Lincolnshire to meet the survivors in the squadron. They're hailed as heroes, and the Allied commanders spread the news far and wide to boost morale. The tide of the war is turning.